Welcome back to another episode of the Atlantic 10 Insider Podcast. My name is Rob Dauster. I have with me today one of my favorite analysts on the field of 68 Media Network, and a guy that knows the Atlantic 10 better than just about anybody else. You've seen him on NBCSN. You're going to see him on ESPN broadcast. You're going to see him all over the place. Rising star, can I call you that, MATT McCALL? Rising star in the industry?
I'm just trying to have some fun. It's been great and appreciate you guys having me on here. Love talking hoops. Was on with my man Patrick Young the other night, which was special after having coached him at the University of Florida. So no, man, we're having some fun and looking forward to talking some Atlantic 10. I've done a couple games for NBC Sports, got another one coming up here, and actually gonna be in the studio in a couple weeks. So yeah, man, hopefully I'm well versed on what's coming at me today in terms of the Atlantic 10.
Well, if you get up there and you happen to see my man Tim Howard on the Premier League broadcast set, tell him I said, how you doing? Go Spurs. We're going to talk through some of the Atlantic 10 standings and your thoughts on some of the top teams specifically. But before we do, I was having a conversation about you the other day, all good things. And I said that you are, for somebody that is doing the media stuff for the first time, you are as prepared and as well-versed, like from hoops from a national perspective, as any coach that we've dealt with. Like, it was, I've really been impressed by your ability to kind of make sure that you know what you're talking about in the moment. So I wanted to ask you this: when it comes to preparing to call a game, or when it comes to preparing to do an episode of After Dark, how much does it differ what you're doing from when you were a coach and preparing to coach a game versus, being a commentator and preparing to call a game?
Well, I think there's obviously differences in terms of where you're at as a coach. Like, as an assistant coach, your main focus and your main job is to scout the other team. Coach Donovan, Coach Jarvis, their job is to, where is our team at? And you're constantly trying to figure out where your team's at mentally and the culture and different things like that. What can we run on offense to put these guys in, the positions where they can be successful? But as an assistant, it's like, hey, if I have the Tennessee scout, I better know Tennessee, everything they're going to do on offense. How are they going to play on defense? How are they going to guard pick and rolls? Do they play any zone? Are they going to press? These are their 10 main sets. Underneath that amount, you got to know all those things. So then you become a head coach, you got to know all those things. And you also got to spend so much time preparing your own team. Where are we struggling? What plays are working on offense? What plays aren't working? Where are we at mentally? Where's the culture at? Who's healthy? Who's not? There's just so many different things. In terms of the media, it's, hey, okay, what are the backgrounds of these players, right? Like, I think when you're scouting a team as a coach, you're not so consumed with the background, or there's a story there, or what's the prep school they went to, or what's the high school they went to, or is there a story there that we can talk about on air? You're going to, break down Yuri Collins in a pick and roll and how good he is, and his eyes are always up, and that's why he's got 10.6 assists per game. But what's the story there? Why did he choose St. Louis? When you're scouting a team as a coach, you really don't care why he chose. We're just how are we going to stop this guy?
Do you even know all their names? You just know the numbers,
right?
No,
I mean, some of their names, but number 5, when number 5 gets it on the wing, he's driving like every single time. So I think that's the difference there, because in media, there's a story to tell a lot of times. And as a coach, hey, how in the hell are we going to stop this son of a bitch? Right. I mean, that's ultimately what you're consumed with and what you're focused on. And it's a lot less stressful in terms of the media. I'm not over there, waking up in the middle of the night consumed with, Obi Toppin and, him going between his legs on the break. But
now you can enjoy it.
I can enjoy it.
That's a good thing.
That's the thing. I ran into Sean Hall, an official at the VCU game the other day. He said, man, this MATT McCALL I like a lot better. He's not over there stomping up and down, yelling at me every single possession. I like this version of you better. So, but yeah, I want to be prepared. I'm trying to attack it just like I would attack coaching, and being prepared, man. I'm having a blast.
The way that I've always kind of thought about it is that when you are preparing to coach a game, you need to predict what the other team is going to do, right? You need to have an idea. They're going to run this action. We have to be able to stop it. They're going to do this thing defensively. We have to be able to score against it. We have to predict what they're going to end up doing. Whereas when you're calling a game, you want to know what they normally do, but you're reacting to what you see. And there's a difference there in understanding what's coming and being able to talk about it versus knowing what's going to come and being able to beat it, like being a step ahead. So I've always thought like it's a little bit of a difference, but there's a difference there. The guy that I think is the best at it is Fran Fraschilla on the Big 12. Like he's He's unbelievable. He knows every single player. He knows every single player's full story. They don't even need a sideline reporter because he could tell all the stories himself. When I talk to people about who should I watch? Who's the guy that's the best at doing it? It's Fran Fraschilla on the Big 12, and then Robbie Hummel. I think Robbie Hummel's just great when it comes to being able to, you know what he can do, Matt? He can be honest about something and be critical about something, and everybody still likes him.
That's
you know how hard that is to do.
That is a skill. It's interesting you brought up Fran Fraschilla too, because I had an opportunity back in August. Larry Shyatt, former head coach at Wyoming, Clemson, was a huge reason why Florida went back-to-back in national championships. Coach Shyatt was on that staff with Anthony Grant and Donnie Jones, and Shyatt would do this clinic every single summer where he'd bring in, NBA coaches and college coaches, someone from the media, and everyone kind of just sit around a table and share. And hey, how can we make the game of basketball better? And had been to the clinic a bunch of different times. It's actually, they do it now every year at the University of Florida. So I drove up in August and I spent some time with Fran, because this is when I was, making the decision, hey, college jobs was filled up. I had a couple of different NBA opportunities, but I was really interested in the media side, and spent some time with him and just talking to him and picking his brain and, how he attacks it in different ways, transitioning from coaching into the media, and, just a humble guy that you like listening to because he knows exactly what he's talking about, but he can be critical at the same point in time without coming off being critical. And like you said, it's a skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the two guys that I love listening to. And if you're taking advice from Fran on how to do it in this business, you are listening to the right people. Listen more to Fran than to Jeff Goodman.
That's
Jeff
what
Goodman's going to tell you, just be as boisterous as you can. Say the most provocative thing you possibly can, and then you'll get all the clicks. You know,
as he's sitting on the beach right now in Charleston, on his second Mai Tai of the day. On sabbatical, even though I know you and him are traveling around.
Banana puddings.
I know you guys are traveling around right now, but he's back in that warm climate down in Charleston.
Yeah, you know what's funny? He showed up. So the first time I saw him was at a place in Manhattan called Bourbon and Baker, which is like this really good little kind of like Southern tapas style restaurant. I've never seen anything like it before. It was fantastic. It was delicious. We ordered dessert, and what they have is these like cookie sandwiches where they have kind of like a pudding in the middle of two freshly baked cookies. So we ordered 4 of them. There's 3 of us sitting at the table. Goodman's like, nah, you know what? I'm good. I'm trying to eat healthy here. I've been eating banana puddings every day. Before he even finishes his meal, he's already eating one of the cookies, right? And then I have my eye. There's one more on the plate. I have my eye on it. I'm about to go grab it and eat it. And still, again, before he's finished all his chicken and waffles, boom, grabs the next cookie, boom. So we had 4 cookies, 2 sides of pudding, and his dessert. And he's like, yeah, I'm trying to eat healthy when I'm here. That's what we're dealing with Jeff Goodman now. Anyways, now that we got the Jeff Goodman slander out of the way, I want to talk about the A-10 because it's a really interesting league to me in the sense that I had very high expectations for it coming into the season. I think in league play, we're starting to see the teams that I thought we were going to see back in November, right? And if you would have told me that we were sitting here in the middle of January and Dayton, St. Louis, and VCU were all sitting here tied for first place in the conference, that's pretty much what I would have expected at the time. They've gotten here different ways. Dayton's dealt with some injuries. St. Louis has decided to maybe start guarding a little bit now. We'll see. That might not be a thing. And then VCU is obviously VCU. They're always going to do what they do. So who's been the most impressive team so far to you in the conference?
Well, I think you look at those 3 and they've all dealt with injuries, right? And even the losses that VCU had, I think 4 of them, Ace didn't play. So you take him off the floor for them, he makes the ship go. And the losses that they've had that he's been in the lineup, he hasn't played well. So when he plays well, they play well. And, outside of a crazy ending at Dayton, I mean, that was nuts. I don't know if you saw the ending of that game,
I did.
But you're talking about a critical turnover, where Dayton just throws the ball to half court right to my man Shriver's hands. He essentially takes like 2 dribbles and pulls up and hits a huge 3. Dayton could be sitting here at undefeated. And oh, by the way, we haven't seen their whole team yet, right? We have not seen them 100% healthy. Hopefully that happens. Hopefully Elvis can get back in the lineup. I mean, you could make a case. I know Deron Holmes is most likely, if they continue to win games, will be player of the year in the league. But, I'm not saying he is. And I think there's a lot of very, very good guards in this league in terms of Yuri Collins and James Bishop, Noah Fernandez. There's good guards all over this league. But, man, going into the season, you're putting Malachi Smith in that category based on what he did last season as a freshman. I think Dayton is still at the top because we haven't seen their whole team. I'm going to let you say his last name. I'm just going to call him Mike. I think as a freshman, you've got to put him in the category as rookie of the year candidate in the Atlantic 10. He's got such good size and feel, and the ball gets up the floor so fast. He never holds on to it, but we haven't seen the whole Dayton team. So it's hard for me to put anybody ahead of them. And hopefully at some point here, they do get all those guys in the lineup. But now I'll go to St. Louis, and everyone's like, what's wrong with St. Louis? What's wrong with St. Louis? What's the problem with St. Louis? Well, one of their best players is coming off an ACL injury, and that's not an easy thing to come back from in Perkins. And if you look at his numbers in the league, at St. Joseph's, first league game, 2 points. At UMass, in a loss. For some reason, I think St. Louis hasn't won in Amherst since 2018, when Hassan French was a freshman. I'll never forget, Marcus Camby was sitting on the baseline. It was like alumni night, and Hassan French kept putting us in a spin cycle. He'd get it at the top of the key and break guys down and spin off and just lay it in. And I was hoping Camby would get up and just kind of block at least one shot. But
hey, he missed his calling as a professional wrestler. That's what that dude should have been. He was huge.
I don't know if he's still playing hoops. I always thought maybe like a defensive end or a tight end. I mean, he was so good on the glass, But anyways, like back to Perkins, he has 2 points at St. Joseph's, has 5 points at UMass, has 5 points versus St. Bonaventure. In his last 3 games, he's gone 10, 27, and 18. So maybe he's starting to piece it together a little bit right there. And you're talking about a guy that was, before he got hurt last year, was preseason player of the year in the league. I mean, I think you look at their schedule, SIU, Edwardsville, right before Christmas break, that's a tough loss. Okay. Coach Ford's probably the only coach in the country to go play at Iona. Do you think any other Atlantic 10 school or high major school or mid-major plus school is going to go play Rick Pitino in his own gym?
No,
nobody else is doing that.
That's a really bad idea.
They've still beaten Memphis and Providence, and they're sitting here tied for first place, in the Atlantic 10. I mean, Yuri Collins and what he's doing, getting 10.6 assists per game, that's, I think, double anybody else in the Atlantic 10. And that's, he's getting 10.6 and his team's averaging 16 assists per game. It's like, okay, well, we got to stop Yuri Collins tonight. Get the ball out of his hands. Well, that's not that easy to do, because he's going to rebound it. He's going to push it himself. He's going to bring the ball across half court. He's going to, the advanced passes he throws in games is probably one of his biggest strengths. It's not like his passing in the half court. It's his passing in the open court that makes him so good. So, I think they've started to hit their stride. You brought a good point up about their defense. Like, look at their field goal percentage defense. It ranks second in the A-10. The problem is they foul too much and they give up too many threes. Like that's been the issue with their defense. So how do they get those two things corrected? But it's hard. And again, and then they lose Fred Thatch, your guy, right? So the injuries they've had to deal with, you've got a guy in Javon Pickett that's coming into a very, very good team. Can he be accepting of his role? That takes some time to do. He was starting, now he's not starting. You've got veteran guys like Hargrove and Thatch that, have essentially come off the bench their entire career. And hey, man, maybe it's my turn now to start. Like there's a lot of moving pieces there where they've dropped a couple games, but now they're sitting here. They beat St. Bonaventure, George Mason, at GW, at Loyola Chicago. So they've won 4 in a row, and they've got LaSalle on Saturday. So I think they're clearly there. And then again, VCU, I think those are the 3 teams, Dayton, VCU, and St. Louis, because of, Ace Baldwin. When he plays well, they play well. And, I was talking to Coach Rhodes about Shriver, and I was doing the game where he kind of had his coming out party, where all of a sudden they're playing against Davidson. I forget what he made, like 5 or 6 threes in the game. Place is going nuts. Me and Mike Corey, we couldn't even hear each other on our headsets there because it was.
That's a great building to watch it. Like if
you
live anywhere near it and you want to go watch a great game,
go there.
1, the building is packed. 2, it's small enough that when it's packed, it gets incredible. Like it just holds in sound really well. And 3, the Peppas are back, man.
The band director, he's back too.
Yes.
I don't know where he's been, but he's back, and it is
Oh, that's a whole level. You want
to
get your media hat on? Go do some reporting on that and figure out the drama behind that deal. We can talk about it off air. I'm not putting that one out publicly. I'll let you do that.
But Shriver, like some of these guys that are on their third stop, right? And you're talking about a former, I think he was Division II player that transferred to Hartford. He's at Hartford. I think he made 88 threes last year and led that conference with 3-point field goal makes. And it was on his last stop. And like the fear of like, hey, like what's next? Like, what am I going to do next year? Like, this is it for me. Like, and you think about that as you're rising into your jump shot, it can be paralyzing, right? Like, no, shoot the best possible rep you can on this possession. And Shriver's kind of hitting his own right now. So I think those three teams are going to be right there. Again, VCU goes on the road. I hate when media, and I'm a media person now, says they stole one. No, they won the game, right? I mean, Dayton made some mistakes down the stretch, but Shriver hits a three. Ball, like they made plays to win the game. They didn't steal one. Nobody stole one. They won the game. Right. Well, that's exactly right.
I think it's perfect to say that VCU stole one because they steal everything. That's what they do. Right. That's their entire brand is like getting out there and pressing and forcing turnovers and making you play a way that you don't want to play and making you uncomfortable. And sometimes it's going to result in you turning the ball over 3 times in like 15 seconds. That's right. What they do. They stole it. That's what it's VCU basketball. That's the Rams right there.
But I don't know if you can ever steal one in that arena, right? Just like you said VCU, like go to a game in there. And I'm actually excited this weekend because I get to go to St. Louis. Like those 3 environments in the Atlantic 10, there's nothing like it. I don't care what other fan base wants to get upset. That's the truth. When you go to those 3 places, it's packed, it's loud. Even like the administration just creating an environment. I think Rhode Island's environment, when Rhode Island's good, is a really good environment as well. But man, those 3 places, that's an immediate, in my opinion, 4-point advantage before the ball's even thrown up in the air. They have that kind of environment in those places.
Yeah. And not only does it make it tough for opposing teams, like you can't run offense, you can't hear anything.
You can't hear. You tell your team, hey, listen, we're not calling plays.
You know who else intimidates? The officials. When people are sitting there screaming at you, yelling at you, when if you make a call, you're going to get booed. Like those dudes are humans. We think they're robots, but they're humans, and that stuff can get to them.
Yeah, when they come over, they look at me. I was like, "You're not going to hear a peep from me tonight." Okay, I'm right here. I got my headset on. Don't worry about it. If you think I need to know something to say on air, please let me know. But you won't hear anything from me tonight.
Every call that you make is the best call you've ever made tonight, guys.
No, but I think you got Rob. I think you got those 3 teams, and then I'm going to put 2 teams. Like if those guys are A, I'm going to put B, and I think there's 2 teams that are in that category.
Okay. I'm excited to hear what you say here because I have an opinion on this too.
Okay. My 2 teams in that category are Richmond and St. Bonaventure. Okay. And everyone's like, and I said this on my first ever episode on the Field of 68, do not sleep on Mark Schmidt and Olean. I know they've had their struggles in the road, but think about this. There was a mysterious foul call versus Rhode Island. And I'm not trying to upset Rhode Island fans, but for them to call that, for the referees at that juncture in the game, to call that foul near half court when it wasn't even in scoring position to put Rhode Island on the free throw line to eventually take the lead back. They were up 11 with 5 minutes to go. They take the lead back. And then Bonaventure came down. They actually had 3 good looks at it to win the game. They're sitting here tied for first. If they win that game, they're sitting here tied for first. They follow that game up. They go home. They play Richmond at home. They've got a completely new team, but that's what he does. The year that they lost Mobley and Adams, who combined to score 40 points per game for them, they lost those guys. They had 3 freshmen by the name of Kyle Lofton, Osun Suni, and Dom Welch. They started that season off 5-10, and they went on to finish 4th in the A-10 and made it all the way to the Atlantic 10 championship game. So I'm not trying to be a Bonnie's homer. They're in that next category right now. They got a kid in Daryl Banks who we saw him last year for St. Peter's, right? What did he have, 27 against Kentucky in the NCAA tournament?
Oh, he was a player. Yeah, he
go. He was unbelievable. They got a young team. You're going to look at that Bonnie's team. If those guys stay together for the next 2 years, man, they're going to be right back where they once were. But they're in that next category. And then I think what Tyler Burton is doing at Richmond and the style of play, it just makes them very difficult to play against. And again, another terrific coach in Chris Mooney. So I think you got those top 3. And then I think those 2 teams for me right now where we stand are in that next tier. And then I think it's kind of jumbled up.
Yeah. Until about, I guess it would have been yesterday, right? Until about 24 hours ago. Recording this on a Thursday morning. Wednesday night, Duquesne went to St. Bonaventure and they got smacked around a little bit. I thought Duquesne was the team that you could put in that conversation. And frankly, I don't know how far out they are. They are currently sitting at 13-6 on the season. Here are their losses: at Dayton, at Richmond by 2, and at St. Bonaventure. Right, those are 3 of the better teams in the conference. 3 of the tougher places to play. Their next games, they're playing Fordham, Loyola, both at home. They're at UMass. They're at GW. Then you get Mason at home. You can win all 5 of those games. Then you get the Bonnies at home. Then you get St. Joe's at home. We could be looking at a situation where they are 10-3 in the league heading into Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I think had they not lost to Bonnies and Richmond, I would put them in that category. I agree with you that they've got to be.
They got to look
towards that top.
We can say like you've had tough losses, you've been competitive. You got to start winning those games at some point.
Got to win.
But I think that they're going to have a chance to make a run here. That's one team to keep an eye on. They only have one more game this year against one of the top 3 teams in the league, and that is at St. Louis on February 18th. So you could be looking at a situation where they have a very, very strong conference record if they find a way to get it done. What do you think of GW? I've been pretty impressed with what Chris is doing down there.
Yeah, I mean, first year, even the fact to keep Bishop, right, and what he's doing and what he's done, I think that's a credit to Coach Caputo and his staff. Like that, I mean, if he would have gone in the portal, I'm sure he could have gone wherever he wanted to. And he's back. Is he second in the conference in assists too? Am I right on that?
Yeah, he's up there. Him and Brendan Adams have both been really good.
Yeah, they've been good, and it's like who in that next crop of teams, right, are going to separate themselves to move towards the top. Who can? Is there anybody in that group? A Mason, a UMass, a GW? You said it, Duquesne. We talked about like, is there anybody in that Davidson? Is there anybody in that crop that says, okay, we may be able to win enough games here to get us that double bye? Because if you get the double bye in the Atlantic 10 tournament, you got a chance to win the thing. I don't care how good the other teams are or they finish, but like
the best team, win 3 games. That's all you got to do.
It's amazing too. I think we had this on air the other night. Like the only team in the last 10 years to win both the regular season and the tournament was that COVID year with Bonnies. Like nobody else does that. Like who wins the regular season doesn't win the tournament. Like it's crazy. So who can separate themselves in that pack right now to hopefully inch towards that double bye? Because if you get that, now you got to win 3 games in 3 days, not 4 games in 4 days. Or man, that Wednesday matchup, now you got to win 5 games in 5 days. That is a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I still think George Mason also has a chance to make a little bit of noise, but it's just we said it heading into the season. It's point guard play for them. Point guard play is so important in college basketball. They're young and not quite as good as I think Kimmy would hope at that position. Let
me say this too, Rob, not to cut you off, but like I always felt like as a head coach, year 2 was the most challenging year.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like for Kim English, like you take away the end of last season, he exceeded expectations. Okay. So by exceeding expectations, he's put more their program has more expectations going into this year, right? They get a Duro back who, he's, preseason first team all league, you could put him in the category for preseason player of the year, but that year 2 with those more expectations put on your team, that's another thing that he's had to deal with. So, again, like you said, the point guard play, but that's just something else I think a lot of times fans don't think about is, man, year 2 is hard. My 2 stints as a head coach, Chattanooga, year 2 was hard. Year 2 at UMass was the hardest year that I had there. And outside, we had won some games in year 1. We beat Providence, we beat Georgia, we beat Dayton twice. We'd won some games. So all of a sudden now there's some expectations, and that's just something else that he's had to deal with, which, for a young head coach is another challenge.
Yeah. And it's not like they've regressed either.
No.
They're still getting better and they're still improving. It's just when people think that it should be like this and it's kind of like this, that's the way that it kind of goes, right? I wanted to ask you about Davidson because we were talking about this a little bit off there. I think that they're probably the more the most disappointing team for me. Like Loyola, you don't want to see Loyola 0-6, but they lost to everybody. They're so young, and it's a big step up in competition. It is what it is, right? That's something that I thought was definitely possible heading into the season. I thought Davidson was going to be in the mix with Dayton and VCU and St. Louis, and kind of one of those teams that should be in the next tier we should be talking about. Foster Lawyer, the Menenga kid, like that. There's a lot of there's players on that roster, and they're sitting here at 2-4 right now. So you don't agree though. You were pushing back on me. What do you see?
I don't agree. I think with everything that they lost last year, like the shooting that they had on the floor last year helped Foster Lawyer so much, because now you can't just key in on him. And Menenga is a capable three-point shooter, but he's more of a back to the basket power forward. If he gets it on the perimeter, if he's wide open and his feet are set, he'll shoot it. But if he doesn't, then he's just going to kind of back his way in there. And that's what makes him so good, is his physicality. But like Brakovic last year at the 5 spot, you're talking about a guy, I don't remember, was he first team all-league? If he wasn't, he was second team all-league, a guy that played a gazillion games for Davidson. He could make threes, right? They had so much more shooting. They were a better three-point shooting team. They still take just as many threes. They just don't make them. And last year, they made them. They're so young, and that's hard for Lawyer to deal with. Listen, I had the VCU Davidson game. He turned it over 7 times. But the length and athleticism of VCU bothered him. And they don't have to, they can cheat off the other guys on the floor. They couldn't do that last year. You know, I'll probably mispronounce his name if I said it, but you remember the player that could just come off those pin downs and down screens and just crank shots, and he didn't even have to get his body square. He could come off and put it in, and he doesn't have that. So now defenses are all what? They're shrinking in, and they're not allowing him anything. And if he comes off a ball screen, and Matt McCALL said this to me, we're trying to put him more pick and rolls to try and free things up. But when you put him in a pick and roll, because I don't have to worry about really the other guys, and I think they're going to be good players. I think they're just all freshmen and they're really, really young. I don't got to worry about them. Man, as he comes off that pick and roll, we're going to get him. We're going to get him. We're going to trap him. And all of a sudden, if he's able to throw it out of the trap, we're fine. We'll rotate out of it, but we'll play the percentages. We're not allowing him to beat us. And that wasn't the case last year. They had just had too many good players out there on the floor.
Yep. When you trap them, and then all of a sudden you have someone tagging the roller, and the only pass that he can make is that kind of over the shoulder pass to the opposite corner, and that guy is someone that's shooting like 30% from 3. That's why shooting is so important. That's why shooters have gravity, right? That's why shooting is so important.
So
well, listen, man, I appreciate the time. I told you we were going to be here for like 20 or 25 minutes. I've kept you for almost 30. So I'll let you get back to doing what you're doing. I'll let you get back to preparing for your game so you can go in there and be the smartest guy.
Big game. Schaefer's Arena. Is that how they say it?
Yeah.
I better get that right before
you better practice
Saturday.
that one.
I got to practice that one.
Hey, they'll let you know if you get that wrong.
They'll let me know. But no, looking forward to being in there. Should be a great environment. And no, man, always love talking hoops with you guys. And I'm on next week. I don't know what night I have. I got it in my calendar there. Hopefully I'm on with you and not Goodman. We gotta no, just teasing, but we gotta get my man Patrick. Maybe if like there's like a Florida, like Kentucky game or something, me and Big Pat can come.
They gotta score more than 12 points and a half, and then we can get you.
It was not the best. I wouldn't call that an offensive clinic. They still had a chance. At the end of the game. They had a chance to win it, but 12 points in the first half. We got to work on the ball plays a little bit there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, make sure you make sure you subscribe, make sure you rate and review the A-10 Insider Podcast. For Matt McCALL, my name is Rob Dauster. We'll see you guys again next Thursday.